The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Let's jump back into some golf. We got some big tournaments, betting-wise, on DraftKings this week. The Scottsdale AZ, I think that means for Arizona, Open. Not only is this an Outlaw Tour event, which, if you retweet this show or share it on social media, you will get into a draw for an Outlaw Tour hoodie. Shout out to the Outlaw Tour for making that happen. Or you can just listen to my picks, fade them, and then win a bunch of money on DraftKings or the betting market. But there's like legit names in the field this week. So smash the like to the episode, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me who you think is actually going to win the Scottsdale AZ Open. And if you want to get into a draw for 100 DK bucks, sub to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, something you enjoy about this show. Joining me to break this all down, the guy who has his pulse on the Outlaw Tour. From The Score, it's Eric Patterson. EP, how much do you love the Outlaw Tour?
I'm enjoying it for this time off. No complaints there, but to say I have my pulse on it might be a bit of a stretch, but I have been following it for, since the PGA Tour shut down. So I do recognize a lot of the names and been tracking the winners as of late. So yeah, it's keeping me sane through these weird times.
Well, have we had a long shot winner yet on the Outlaw Tour? Or does it usually come from like one of the top 15-ish guys?
Yeah, I think someone pointed this out last week. I don't think there's been a winner since we've been tracking a winner over 18-1. So typically the cream does rise to the top, but the previous events, they haven't really had this much talent, quote unquote talent in the field. So all these new guys at the top have kind of, increased the odds on guys that were typically the favorites a few weeks ago.
Well, have we had anyone yet who is a name that we recognize has come onto the Outlaw Tour and actually won? Because it seems to take some of these like quote unquote favorites, the PGA guys that we're used to, like a tournament to get the ball rolling downhill a little bit.
Yeah, Callum Hill. Callum Hill played twice. The first event he came out and I think it was like 20th, and then he won the next week. So he's the one name. He's a European Tour player. He's the one name who has kind of broken through here. Then Cheka did it a few weeks ago as well. So it does take them a bit to get going, but once they figure it out, they find the winner's circle pretty quickly.
So let's jump right into it then in terms of the pricing and the overall betting odds on DraftKings. Joel Damon, you might know him. He has a bucket hat. He is number one in pricing. He's $11,000. And in the betting market, he's dropped from 4.5-1 to 5-1. So you're getting deeper odds on Joel Damon right now, but he's far and away the favorite in this field by the betting odds. But in DraftKings, it's Damon, Streelman, and Alex Checchia are 11, 10-6, 10-4. Then you have Matt Pisciano is an even 10K. He was the guy who won last week, right?
Yeah, he won last week for sure. Yep.
So does that mean like Checchia's already won? Damon and Streelman we're seeing for the first time. These are guys that we know from real PGA events, guys that we bet on in real PGA events. And, they come in as Streelman opened up a little bit higher, but he's now down to 12-1. Pisciano is 12-1. Checchia is 11-1 where I'm seeing him right now. I think I would probably be good with fading all these guys, wouldn't you?
Yeah, if we're talking, showdown on DK, fading the top can be beneficial. You've seen, you're the first round leader guru. You always kind of fade the chalk. Any of these guys can shoot 65, 64, and the top of the favorites don't necessarily do that all the time. But if we are looking from a betting's perspective, I would try to find value at the top. I'm not sure I'm willing to go to the top 4 guys, but there are some names that are intriguing a bit further down that we'll get to. Damon just shot 58 yesterday, so people are aware of this. He even just came out and said that he might have peaked a little too early. I think, everyone talks about it's hard to follow up such a good round. We'll see. Give him 3 rounds, he'll probably find his way into the mix. But that 58 is impressive. So he's at least playing well. That's good to know.
Well, and the reason that Joel Damon is playing this event, I know that they were trying to get him out in order to get into the field right when the Outlaw Tour first started, but he won this event in 2017 before going on to become a member on the PGA Tour. So at least he has some familiarity with this course.
Yeah, he won it. There's a few others. I think Nate Lashley played it in 2016. Callum Hill played it in 2018. So these top guys, some of them have played the course. if you're an Arizona guy, they've probably played talking stick a bunch of times. So course history's, probably something. Even if it's not there, they're probably pretty familiar with the course.
Well, the rest of the 9K level on DraftKings right now. So after Pisciano, you got my guy, Dylon, woo! $9,800. Callum Hill, who you said has played this event before, has already won on the Outlaw Tour. He's $9,600. C. Roberts is 95. Is that Carson Roberts? Is that his name?
That's correct.
Yeah, Carson Roberts. He won like a month and a half ago. My guy, Brandon Harkins. I haven't heard of Brandon Harkins in like 2 years as a favorite of mine as a first-round leader guy. So former PGA dude. He's $9,400. Nasty Nate Lashley, who won on the PGA Tour last year, $9,300. And then you get like 3 in a row of favorites of the Outlaw Tour. You got Jeremy Paul at 92. You got KK Lumsholst, or however Rick told me you pronounce his name. He's an even 9,000. And then Aguiano is $8,900. Then you got this guy T. Montgomery. He's down there. He's played this event the last 2 years and has come third and has come 7th. Well, someone named Brady Chulkins actually won this event last year, and he's even way down on this list in terms of he is in $7,800. So who do we like from here? Because I just in full disclosure, I put a bet in on Lashley at 33-1. He's already been bet down. I bet JJ Spawn again. He's 40-1. Only because I know who these guys are. That might not be the best way to go about this. I feel like that idiot who comes and be like, well, Tiger's 25-1, like when he couldn't walk. Like, how could he lose? And then, someone that we know wins, and they're like, I've never heard of that guy. That's how I feel right now about the Outlaw Tour. So I'm betting those 2 guys, but I might take a shot on Dylon Wu. Hot fire Dylon. It seems like he's been ramping up for a win here.
Yeah, there's a lot of intriguing names here. There's a lot of interesting prices compared to their betting odds. You brought up Carson Roberts. He's 80-1 this week, but for some reason he's 9,500. And then last week he was 25-1, but he was 7,000. So the algorithms can't figure out how to price him. So I would anticipate almost no ownership on him. Your guy Dylan Wu, almost said Dylon there. Something he just doesn't. He hasn't really impressed me. In terms of his results so far. He's one of the top guys on the Korn Ferry Tour. I would have expected him to at least have, something in like the final group, but he's just kind of hanging around in the top 10, top 5 area, which is nice. But again, with all these new guys coming in, he's going to have his work cut out for him. Harkins actually played with Damon yesterday. He shot 70. So it's nice to know that he's playing, but he still lost by 12 shots, and he lost to Cubs second baseman Ian Happ. So that's not a great sign either. But yeah, I love your Lashley call. He's down to 18-1. I see. For some reason, he's just not really being respected as Damon or Cheka, which I could argue that Lashley's better than those guys on the PGA Tour. So to see his price down at 25-1 in the low 9,000s, I think that's a decent guy to target.
So do we think like Callum Hill is someone that we should go back to as well?
Yeah, so he won, and then I think he missed the cut last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember, but he's definitely not a PGA Tour name that we'll recognize, but he is definitely the same caliber as some of these guys, and people are probably kind of over him, and they'd rather pivot to the new PGA Tour names that they're seeing. So I think Callum Hill is someone to fly under the radar.
Yeah, so I mean, no Streelman for me. I'm not touching those odds. I saw Nate Lashley, even at 18-1. I'm still seeing him at 20-1 in some spots. I'm still good with 20-1 to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's still very nice. But yeah, your Spawn at 40. I'm sure people are betting him, but he hasn't moved, and he was kind of an interesting test case last week or 2 weeks ago when he came on. He was 30-40%. He was one of the favorites, but people still weren't really sold on him, and I think he came like third to last of the guys who made the cut. So it just maybe goes to show the talent that is out there, and that these guys they're not just going to show up and dominate right away. No,
but I am encouraged that he A, made that cut, and B, he got his first tournament out of the way. And he's hanging 40-1. He's currently $8,400 on DraftKings. Like, I know that he hasn't been good on the PGA Tour this year, but in my mind, I've played JJ Spawn at a more expensive price than this in a PGA event.
When you break it down that way, it makes way too much sense to play him. And I'm sure you won't be alone there. When he was, in the $10,000 range, it was easier to fade, but at 8,400, it's definitely more enticing there. There are, like you said, Calkins. There's a bunch of Korn Ferry Tour guys here that are intriguing to say the least.
So the guy right next to Spawn at $8,300 is Nick Mason, who's just getting a lot of online buzz this week. He opened at like 65, but now he's being hung at what's Mason down to? 45. I think he's down to 30 in some spots. Like, I don't know who this is. Who is this guy?
Yeah, he's like I think he's pushing 40. He's like a mini tour grinder. Apparently he's like lights out putting. If you flip through the Outlaw Tour Instagram, there's nothing but Nick Mason highlights of him making putts. So he can get the flat stick going. In a field like this, it's, his talent level doesn't quite compare to the guys around him, like Spawn or Montgomery or Brent Grant. There's guys that are a lot better than Nick Mason, even though he is good. The influx of talent is changing things.
So what do we make of the guys that have been playing on the Outlaw Tour now for the past 6 weeks or so? Like the Gunn brother, the Jimmy Gunn, the Paul brothers, KK, like all of these guys. Colton Yates is another one who just comes inside the top 10 every single week. Should we go back to these guys because they've been out there grinding, or is the talent gap going to be too much, do you think? Because like Colton Yates is 66-1. Like, I don't hate that. Maybe it's a top 5 play, maybe it's a top 10 play, but even just scrolling down to like what his DraftKings price is right now, like Yates is 7,900. Like, I'm going to be using Yates in my lineup.
Yeah, Yates went full Keegan last week. Maybe an under talked about storyline, but I think he shot 8 under round 1 and then 5 over the next day. So he's hit or miss, but he's definitely capable of making a ton of birdies. But I would go to guys who have been playing. Jeremy Paul and Yannick Paul, they're twins, the last couple of weeks they were actually priced very similar, but now there's almost like $2,000 difference between the two, or just 1,000. But he's like 40-1 when his brother's 20-1. So there is some separation now, but definitely a guy you can go back to.
So if we go to the top of the DraftKings board and just look at who we're going to take here, I'm good with full fading the top 4 guys in Showdown. Like you mentioned, just for one round, anything can kind of happen. And with Streelman and with Damon, if it's their first competitive round in a very long time, maybe they go out and storm it because they're so much better than everyone else. It's entirely possible. But for their price tags, what you have to come up with on the, like, normally in the first round leader, I'm good with taking a guy who's $6,300, $6,500, because I can pinpoint what they do well. Does that match up with what this course actually offers? Are they high-end birdie makers? The issue with the Outlaw Tour is I don't know who any of these guys are, so I can throw a dart at $6,500 because when you look at the top 5 of the first round, there's probably going to be 2 guys from sub $7,000 who are down there. I just don't know who they're going to be. Do you have a feel for any of these guys?
Yeah, this is you can construct like a pretty nice balanced lineup, and 2 weeks ago they would have all been 5K like 5-figure guys. So if you do want to pivot from the top 5 guys, you can start with Callum Hill, get Limbasut, you can get Anguiano. Like these, you can build like a really, really strong Outlaw Tour lineup. And in theory, you could have a bunch of guys who all shoot 6, 7 under. I would. The winning score from this tournament is around 10 under. There's only 2 par 5s, so there probably won't be a lot of eagles. But you got to avoid dudes who are going out there and shooting 3, 4 over, and they just absolutely torpedo your lineup. So if you can avoid the 6K range, I think you're giving yourself an edge that way. And if you just want to build with nothing but $9,000 and $8,000 guys, and that's a good start.
So I'm looking at Flavin here. He's 50-1 to win. Patrick Flavin, but he's only $7,500. That seems like at least just by odds value alone versus the price, that could turn out to be okay. Triplet's a bit more expensive. He comes in at 50, but like Andrew Funk is like $7,100. He's 80-1. And he's the same odds to win this event as Colt Knost. And I don't know what to make of Colt Knost because I thought he retired, but apparently he's playing in this tournament.
Yeah, Colt Knost has a podcast now, so he's definitely retired. I would avoid him, but there are this is where there's some big pricing discrepancies. Calkins is 28-1, but he's 7,800, and then Brady Schnell, who just called out Vijay Singh, is 100-1, and he's 7,600. So I'm not sure what odds they pulled to get the pricing, but there is some large discrepancies. If you compare the two, you'll be able to find some value, and those are some names that stuck out to me. Calkin should probably be around 8,500. He won it last year. I've heard he plays this course quite frequently, so that should help.
Yeah, and normally when we talk about like the home course guys, I think the big example is always Ryan Palmer at Colonial. That's his home course. I know Webb Simpson's played well at Quail Hollow, which is his home course as well, but he's also had some disastrous outings. Is that when it's a PGA setup, it's different than how you normally play it. I can't really imagine that this is going to be too much different than going out on the weekend and playing.
Yeah, they just put down different Outlaw Tour tee markers and away they go from the tips. It's not going to be, it's not going to be juiced up. There's not going to be longer rough or tighter greens or anything. It's just going to be like last week they had public play behind them. So they couldn't play 18. The playoff couldn't go back to 18 because there was a group behind them. So just kind of gives you a lay of the land of, what this Outlaw Tour is all about.
One guy that I actually used last week, and it was just for name purposes only, and now he's $6,700, and it's my guy, Khan. He wasn't bad. He's 275 to 1 to win. Probably not going to win, but if there's one guy to go to below $7,000, I think that's going to be my guy.
I wasn't tracking him last week. There are some guys down here that I recognize who went low last week. Neil Johnson shot 7 under to close last week, and I was talking to a guy on the field who knows some guys who are trending in the right direction or like have some name value at least on these mini tours, and Neil Johnson was one that came up. And Samuel Saunders, the fake Sam Saunders of the PGA Tour, is another guy that he was 150 to 1 last week and kind of got some buzz, and now he's 200 to 1 and 6,900. I'm one of the value guys that I've got circled.
So the only other guys I can kind of bring up is Ryan Dillon. He's 44 years old, but he's played in this event the past 3 years and never finished worse than 16th, but he hasn't been playing at all, at least on the Outlaw Tour, but he's way down in the pricing. Just trying to find some other guys who've been playing yet have played this tournament before. Let's see. Yeah, Con was 17th last week. Neil Johnson was 10th last week, like you mentioned. Let's see here. Hans Reimers was 16th at this event 2 years ago. He was 7th last week. That's not bad, right?
Yeah, Reimers actually had a decent final round last week. I believe he was in the winning lineup that took down the 20K. So when you have guys like that, people will recognize their name and they will be more drawn to them. Someone who's garnered a lot of ownership over the last few weeks, mainly because I think he was leading the tournament when Outlaw DK became a thing, was Kyle Slattery. He's kind of hit or miss, but he should garner some ownership. And there's probably a lot of options down here that you can pivot to. Eric Ashe, I think, won this 2 years ago. Again, someone who hasn't been playing, but anytime you can have a former winner who's 100 and 150 to 1, that's not a bad spot.
No, that's really not horrible at all. Dan Hudson's another one. He hasn't finished outside the top 20 in any of his 4 Outlaw Tour events so far. He's $7,100. That if you're just looking for guys at the very bottom end, because you do want to take Damer, you do want to take Streelman. I can envision myself trying to play a lineup with 5 guys above $8,000, but not above $10,000, and just dropping down, maybe even playing 3 lineups and just picking off one of these guys each to see if I can make it work.
Yeah, that's if you recognize a name from weeks past and they're around the $7,000 mark, they're probably decent if they've had a top finish. There are a lot of names in here that have just kind of came out of nowhere, and it would take some research to go figure out who they are. They could be rusty. You really don't know. One of the names that was tipped off to me last week, again by a guy in the field, it really helps if you're talking to guys in the field. They're very open to giving you information or telling you how guys are playing or people they think are going to do well. It's this Cannon guy. I think his name's Brady Cannon. He came top 5 last week. I believe he's finished in the top 5 or top 10 at this event before. If it wasn't for one, he made a triple bogey on number 9 last week. He was in the final group. Kind of plummeted there, but Blake Cannon is a guy to have an eye for.
Yeah, and he's only $7,300 too. So he's another one of these guys that you can throw in the back end of your lineup, or if you have to double down with him and Neil Johnson, him and Reimers, him and Saunders, you pair those 2 guys together, you can essentially afford anyone else that you want in the showdown contest.
Yeah, and you mentioned triplet earlier. it's Kirk Triplett, the former PGA Tour pro, who's like 50-1. But then his son Sam Triplett, who I believe is a lot better golfer, is like 100-1. So don't get your triplets mixed up.
No, and just for reference, Sam Triplett is $8,200 for round one showdown. Kirk Triplett is $7,900. Didn't Kirk Triplett like make the cut at the 3M Open last year? Is that am I thinking of someone? Maybe that was Tom Lehman. I can't even remember now. Some old dude from Minnesota actually like made the cut at the 3M.
Tom Lehman, that's another name that you see in these Outlaw Tour fields. So maybe there's something with the 3M Open and Outlaw Tour golf. I have no idea, but yeah, the Triplett brothers and their dad. It's a whole trio of triplets.
So for me, bets down that I have JJ Spawn with the each way. I'm going to go with, I already played Nate Lashley at 33. You say he's at 18. I see him at 20. I'd play him at 18 or 20. I think those are the two guys I'm just going to roll with this week.
I don't mind those at all. Again, I want to try and hit a long shot. It's probably not going to happen. I've put a little sprinkle down on Neil Johnson at 150 and Samuel Saunders at 200. Again, those are probably longer shots than their numbers are, but something to keep an eye on. But for me, I took this guy named Kevin Lucas, who finished, I think he was top 5 2 weeks ago. He was at 66 and now he's 33. So something happened there where I guess Jeff Ulrich was the first guy to spot him. So Kevin Lucas is actually the only, sub 50 bet I have down right now.
All right. So if you are going with Neil Johnson, I just found him at 225-1. So I'll play him with a top 5 as well for 1/4 the price.
I mean, he shot 7 under to close last week. So he's got some kind of game there and it's playing pretty decent, I guess.
Let's see. Lucas, $8,600 on DraftKings. So DraftKings wasn't fooled. A lot of the books weren't fooled, but apparently, when he opened at certain places, he was just way down the list.
Yeah. Like, again, the books don't really know who these guys are. DraftKings, I'm sure, is trying to figure it out as well. So, yeah, you get some odd pricing and some very high extreme waves in ownership as well.
So
Carson Roberts there's no one's going to play him at 9,500.
Like, what have you noticed from the winning lineups and the lineups that do well? Is there anything that stands out from them, like the way that they're built, or they avoid all like the super chalky guys? Because like last week, was it Carson Roberts who was like $7,000 for round one, and it just didn't correlate with his odds whatsoever?
Yeah, and he was in some of the higher contests. I think he was pushing like 80% owned. So they are, as with most contests, the ownership is going to be very concentrated on like the quote unquote sharp plays. But I mean, it's weird as the week goes on. I've noticed that round one, you'll see all of the names that are popular that from previous weeks will have high ownership. So if you can go to a guy that maybe like Tyler Montgomery is a good case. I think he's going to be low owned, but no one's ever seen his name yet, but has probably the same pedigree as the guys around him and has an equal chance of shooting low. But once he goes out and shoots 6 under, he's going to be the swing in ownership is going to be so drastic that he'll be a fade come round 2. So it's kind of picking your spots and where you believe the ownership's going to go just based on names from weeks past. And then people react really, really quickly to what they've done yesterday. So just as the week goes on, you just kind of got to remember who you liked before the week, and they'll probably pan out come I guess, the final round.
All right, well, there's more going on in golf right now. What I wanted to bring up to you was the UFC card had a guy test positive for COVID-19, and they just took his fight off of the card, and they're still going forward with it as planned. Do you think this is a good thing for golf that now there's like a precedent set that, hey, someone tested positive, the event wasn't canceled, and where golf is going to be like open air, that maybe golf can figure out a way to where UFC is kind of the test case for all of this, that if someone tests positive for Colonial like the day before, that they're not going to cancel Colonial, just remove the guy from the field?
Brendan Todd actually came out in a recent interview. I guess he did, some kind of media day. He said that's actually the plan going forward, is they're going to have multiple tests throughout the week, one at home, one once you arrive, and then one, midweek, say Friday. And if you do test positive, you're in quarantine. and the show's going to keep going on, which I personally I find weird. I can't see a scenario, where Rory McIlroy tests positive and the tournament continues. That just kind of doesn't sound right to me. But I guess that's the plan they see fit, and that's what they're going to move ahead with. And I think the NBA is actually doing the same thing. So maybe that's what medical experts have told these leagues, is that that's what they can do. They can test, and if you keep testing frequently, you won't have an outbreak.
So if we think about some of the stuff that's coming up, I'm going to get to the Fowler and Wolf and Dustin and Rory matchup that's coming up on Sunday, but I know a lot of people are going to watch this on Monday or even after that starts. That might not be in. So we'll save that for last. Tiger and Phil, this thing that's going on in these skins contests or these matchup contests, if you're going to bet it, you just bet the underdog, don't you?
Yeah, I think you bet. I think that's Mickelson proved that to us in the first match. Although Mickelson Brady, that just sounds like they're going to be playing alternate shot, which sounds like a disaster on the back nine. I think Peyton's a better golfer to begin with than Tom Brady is. So, it's more of an avoid situation for me. I'm not going to be laying down a couple hundred on a little hit and giggle between four superstars. So I would, if we're going to bet the underdog of any of these matches, it would be Wolf Fowler this week as opposed to 2 weeks.
Yes.
In Mickelson.
So that starts at 2 p.m. Sunday. So if you're watching after that, sorry you missed out. I think I'm going to lay down like Fowler and Wolf versus DJ and Rory. Like just hearing that on paper sounds so horrific that of course DJ and Rory are going to win. But it's a skins game. It's a pairs competition. And you're getting plus 175 for two guys who are really, really good in a situation where maybe Rory and DJ don't really care.
Yeah, I can't really see, DJ showing up super focused, he probably hasn't been working on his game much. And I think, Rory will probably want to win, but I can't really see DJ stressing too much about it. Whereas Wolf will have something to prove. And I think him and Fowler will have some good chemistry, but, it's exciting to have some live golf to look forward to.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for that's one of the things to look at. It was like Phil versus Tiger in the match, and we ended up betting on Phil for that only because it felt like Phil actually had something to play for. Like, I don't want to get blown out by Tiger. And then with Tiger, he's like, yeah, I'm just doing this for money. I don't really care. When it comes down to this, like Wolf is the only one of these four guys that feels like he needs to take it seriously. Maybe he doesn't take it seriously because it's not serious. But out of the four of them, it does feel like he would be the one to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah, Wolf, people are like, they were wondering why Wolf was even in this. Obviously, the PGA Tour wants to promote him. TaylorMade wants to promote him. So he probably is thinking he has to go prove himself a little bit with some of the biggest names in golf. So I think that's a little added motivation in a competition that will have next to no competitiveness in it. So I just think him and Fowler just kind of will mesh better together and figure it out. But yeah, I can see DJ just screwing around and not really taking it seriously. So
do you think that we get any more of these exhibition skins games? Because we know like Fowler and Justin Thomas have been playing together, but it hasn't been like something you can bet on competition. They're not airing it, anything like that. And do you think that the Outlaw Tour, with their success in streaming a lot of these groups via Periscope, that we might get some better coverage of some of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I like these little hit and giggle things. There's something different. There's something new, especially in this time. I could see maybe a couple more before Colonial starts up. That might be a little wishful thinking. We probably would have already heard of it by now, but I think Outlaw Tour is kind of showing that there is a need or a thirst for golf, even if it isn't PGA Tour. These DraftKings contests are pretty large. People are tuning in. I think they had close to 200 viewers on a Wednesday afternoon watching a blurry feed of two guys they never heard before. So people are paying attention to it. Something to get a little action on. I think it's going to be well received. These two matches that are coming up are definitely getting way more kind of positive publicity as opposed to the Tiger Phil match from from 2018.
Yeah, well, I guess with nothing going on, you kind of have to do that. But just looking at the DraftKings lobby right now for the Outlaw Tour first round contest, there's contests that have $20,000, $200,000, $100,000, $40,000, $20,000, $15,000, and all these contests are filling. Like, I mean, I can put in as many notes as I want. DraftKings doesn't really listen to me, but do you think you could run a millionaire maker for Colonial, $20 millionaire maker, and it would fill?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the field, like Brooks has already said he's in. I'm sure Justin Thomas and Rory are itching to go. So the field is going to resemble something of a major or, a memorial or one of the bigger tournaments on the schedule. And I think, yeah, a millionaire maker is definitely a possibility that I think they'd have no issue filling. People are playing like NFL Sims. I haven't really looked into all of these crazy other sports that people are playing, but I think any kind of live golf with Rory, Brooks, DJ, I'm sure we'll have no issue filling. Tiger won't be there, but all the other guys will.
Yeah, when do you think the first time that we see Tiger in a PGA event is going to be? Do you think it's going to be the PGA Championship, if that goes?
Ooh, what's the schedule? Memorial's one of the first few back. I think Memorial is like the third event or fourth event, and I think that'll be the one Tiger shows up to.
And then it would be like Memorial, then PGA Championship. I'm just looking at the schedule right now. Let's see.
It goes Colonial, then what's the Travelers, 3M, or the Rocket Mortgage. Sorry.
All right, yeah. So here we are: Colonial, Heritage, Travelers, Rocket Mortgage, John Deere, Memorial. So that'd be the sixth one back.
I can't really see Tiger showing up to Heritage. He might do the Travelers, but I think Memorial is probably the best bet for Tiger's return. It's a long way to wait. I mean, 5 tournaments when all these guys are out playing, and he'll probably be itching to get back too. But we'll see.
I actually think the Heritage might draw some of the best fields of this return. Like maybe people go to Texas, play Colonial because it's the first tournament back. They're ready to go. But I would think like locally, you have all these guys who live in Arizona or California or Texas. They'll probably play in Colonial, but the vast majority of the golfers live in Florida, and Charleston's not that far away in terms of travel. But like having to go to Connecticut or Illinois for the John Deere or Detroit for the Rocket Mortgage, like that seems probably less feasible than just getting in your car and driving, or just taking a 30-minute helicopter ride and getting up to where you need to go. It feels like Harbour Town might actually draw, which is great because it's my favorite tournament of the year. I hope it gets a great field because it's an awesome course and a great venue. That maybe that's one where we see a lot of the top names, especially the ones from the East Coast.
I'm very, very interested to see how these guys, plan their schedule, their travel. Obviously, the top guys will probably travel private, but I talked to Michael Gligic, and he said he was talking to a guy who's planning a schedule based on only driving. So wherever he can drive to and get to, that's the schedule he's going to play.
Well, that would make the most sense then. That you might see a cluster of all the same people playing Rocket Mortgage, John Deere, Memorial, and then the 3M, because you're basically in like central north, and you can drive to all those events no problem.
Yeah, this whole travel thing is blowing my mind. I just can't really fathom piling a bunch of tour pros into planes right now and flying them around the country. But I mean, that's really not my issue to tackle. But someone brought this up yesterday to me on Twitter. It's these big events, people aren't going to want to miss them, and if they do test positive by the week before, they're going to have to sit out 2 weeks. So maybe they just plan their schedule every 2 weeks, so they know that if perhaps they do test positive, that they won't miss any of the big events that they've got planned, like the Houston Open. If these rules are still in effect come November, no one's going to play the Houston Open in fear of getting coronavirus, and then they can't play the Masters. So it's just like some of those scheduling decisions are going to have to be made.
That's I had not even considered that. So that means the Safeway Open is basically that was off the schedule for most people anyway, but with the US Open being the week after, like that's just going to be a no-go for anyone, isn't it?
Oh, I think the Safeway is right after the Tour Championship as well. So yeah, the Safeway Open is going to be just a collection of, Outlaw Tour guys.
And like, I would even think that unless you need to qualify for the Tour, like anyone who has qualified for the Tour Championship after the Northern Trust, basically the top 10 guys in the field who can't be bumped in terms of FedEx Cup points, like why would you even play the BMW Championship when you know that there's 10 mil or what is it, $17 million on the line at the Tour Championship? Why would you even risk it?
Yeah, these are the bridges we're gonna have to cross in like this new coronavirus PGA Tour. It's gonna be very interesting to see how guys deal with things, how they're traveling, where they're staying. I heard that they want to, pack them into one hotel, which is probably the best idea. But some guys aren't really used to living like that. Yeah, it's kind of exciting. I really hope that it does start in June, and we can kind of see how this is all going to play out.
All right. Eric Patterson, what you got on the go over at The Score? Any new fun articles coming out?
I've been doing a countdown series. I think there's 32 days until the PGA Tour starts, and just kind of rhyming off random facts, people, little looks at history that's related to the number of days left. But yeah, not just trying to stay up with the news. Some stuff coming out this week, kind of previewing the big TaylorMade match. So yeah. It's nice to have some real golf to talk about instead of just kind of look back feature articles all the time.
All right, you can follow Eric on Twitter at @EPatGolf. And once again, to recap, I'm going Lashley, I'm going Spawn, and EP talked me into Neil Johnson, 225-1 with the top 5 each way. Maybe even throw a top 10 on that. Maybe a first round leader on that too, just to spice up the action a bit. If you're wondering about the Outlaw Tour, it starts Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Like the situation with a lot of this stuff, it's fluid, but it will start on Tuesday morning at some point. So you have till then to get your lineups in and fill those contests. Maybe we'll get even bigger ones for round 2 and round 3. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. Remember to retweet the show or share it on Facebook or do whatever. Share it on social for a chance to get into a draw to get an Outlaw Tour hoodie. I mean, it's going to be weird to look back on this because if the Outlaw Tour becomes like a thing, you'll have one of the original hoodies that goes along. So that'd be pretty cool. I want to get my hands on one. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this week. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!